Hollywood and the gaming industry love blood and guts. They go for it all the time. And many of us go along for the ride, hoping for the, ew, cool response. But there is some significant blood and gore that Hollywood skips. Childbirth. Yep, I'm going to go there. Whatever our many differences, our births were big, nasty messes. With very few exceptions, Hollywood skips the mess. You see a woman clutch her side or sharply catch her breath. Then there's the water breaking. If seen at all, this is a nondescript puddle somewhere near the woman. Jump from there to the hospital where the woman is grunting, maybe even screaming, pushing, teeth bared. Then there may be a shot of the dad-to-be feeling sick or nearly fainting. Then poof, a beautifully clean 6-month-old baby appears. Not the case. Not the case at all. How do I know? I have created 2 of those messes myself. First, the semi-mess that Hollywood might allow you to see, the water breaking. Rarely happens, and when it does, it rarely happens like that. With my first child, I was lying in my bed, and I felt a faint trickle of liquid between my legs. I told John, either I just wet myself or my water just broke. You would think it would be obvious, but it's not. By the time you're 9 months pregnant, your body has changed so much and betrayed you so often that you just aren't sure what's going on. Like when I took a spring afternoon walk and out of the blue, I shat myself. Doctors aren't sure if it's the baby water either. The only way they can really tell is to do a quick test of the liquid they collect from your vagina. If it dries in some sort of crystallized fan pattern thing, then it was the baby water, and it is showtime. What happens more often, but again, not with every delivery, is that the woman passes the mucus plug. Let me say that again. Mucus plug. The mucus plug keeps the uterus a closed shop while the baby is developing. I never passed a mucus plug with either of my pregnancies that I know of. I think I was so freaked out at the thought of it that I willed both of mine into oblivion. I learned about mucus plugs in the childbirth classes that hospitals offer. I'm convinced that the main goal of these classes is to clue you into the sheer amount of gore about to befall you. The nurse teaching the class also told us that we would be shitting in the process of delivering our babies. She said pooping, and she warned all the birthing partners there not to say anything about it when it happens. One of my friends doesn't know if she shit during childbirth because her husband won't tell her. That means she did. John did not say anything at the time, but afterward he told me I did. Twice. Looking back, I know when it happened because all the doctors and nurses and technicians in the room began a chorus of, "Great job, Marion," and "That's it," and "Keep pushing," as if there were a choice. Then a clean sheet was stuck under my ass. Twice. They used to give women enemas when they first went into labor, but they don't do that anymore. Shit happens during childbirth. Pee happens too, of course. Catheters are not standard operating procedures for childbirth by any means, but they are if you have an epidural. And for me, there was no question about whether I was going to have an epidural. I would have named my baby Epidural if it were required. John can't help me as an eyewitness for this part because he was sent out of the room. Only the assisting nurse gets to see the epidural specialist as he or she inserts the needle into your spine. That was fine with me because John is so bad with needles that I suspect he would have fainted right then before we got to any of the real gore. So once the needle is in your spine, you get a little booster mechanism to give yourself a little extra dose of meds if you need to take the edge off. Then it times you out for 10 minutes. I spent most of the time in the delivery room pressing the booster button, saying things like, "Holy shit, I know it has been 10 minutes by now." The epidural renders your body below the waist useless. And what with the needle in your spine and all, getting up to go to the bathroom is difficult anyway. So to keep you from sitting in a growing puddle of your own pee, they put in a catheter. Back at that childbirth class, when we toured one of the delivery rooms, our guide pulled down one of the huge spotlights that are directed at your business end when all the action happens. Yes, during childbirth, your vagina is essentially on stage with lights and a surprisingly large audience. Anyway, when the guide pulled down this particular light, we could see clearly that it was splattered with blood. She quickly pushed it up again and told a nurse that the room had not been properly cleaned. I suspect instead that it was all part of the act, all part of our blood and guts inoculation. When the time to push arrives, these lights are turned on and the end of the bed is pulled away, and what is essentially a trash can is put by your butt. That way, all the nastiness goes straight into the garbage. The blood, the shit, the placenta, any remaining baby water, all of it, except the baby. And once the pushing started, I was all business. The doctor practically forced me to reach down and touch my daughter's head when she was crowning. I didn't want anything to mess with my focus. At the time, I would have sworn my survival depended on my focus. But I reached down because I'm a pleaser. And I touched something firm, like a slimy softball where my vagina should have been. Of all I went through in the deliveries, this disgusted me the most. For John, what grossed him out worse was cutting the umbilical cord. This is meant to be some sort of symbolic gesture to include the birthing partner, but John wanted no part of it. This was fine with me, and we had planned for him to say, "No, thank you." The nurses were not hearing of it, and they practically forced him to cut the cord. "Here, take this pair of scissors and cut through this flesh that just came out of this woman." Of course, I ripped during delivery. That means the skin between the vagina and the anus tore. Doctors used to cut that skin, an episiotomy, but now they just let it rip. One of the last things the doctor does, if necessary, is stitch up this bit of skin. Remember that I was numb below the waist, so I had no idea that this is what she was doing. When I scooted up in bed while my doctor was in mid-stitch, she gave out quite a shout, as if after all that, this is what concerned her. Finally, a person comes in to clean up the new mother. This has got to be one of the worst jobs ever. Without expression, without acknowledging the baby or me, she sponged the gore from my thighs and ass. Threw all the sheets and towels and nastiness in the trash before wheeling it out. I hope she makes more than minimum wage. I should have had John tip her. And now you know. Of course, I didn't have C-sections. I've heard that there is nothing like having your internal organs piled up on top of your abdomen while they pull the baby out. Let's see if Hollywood ever comes to terms with that.
Marion Wilson, everybody.